Today we're recapping the action sci-fi movie Alita, Battle Angel. Spoilers ahead. It's the year 2563, 300 years after the fall. The movie opens up with an aerial shot of a floating city named Salem. And the world appears to be completely changed, and garbage is dumped from Salem to the city beneath. The garbage dump is filled with broken nanotech parts and organs of dead robots. At the center of this large heap of death appears Dr. Dyson Ido, searching for valuable parts. At first, he finds a detached robotic arm, and then the robotic skull of a dead robot. From the skull, he pulls out an eye, cleans it, and places it in his bag. Moving forward, his eyes come upon something much more valuable, a female cyborg. The cyborg initially appeared to be dead, but after running a scan on her face, he realizes that she's still alive. He holds her detached body in his hands, takes a long cursory look, and carries her to his home, which doubles as a laboratory and hospital. At the hospital, Nurse Gerhard stands and looks at amazement as Dr. Dyson begins working on her. He plugs the female cyborg to his powerful machines, while a number of analytics run in the background. The doctor leans closer to the cyborg and rhetorically asks what the cyborg is dreaming of. At the same time, Nurse Gerhard begins a series of scans on her brain, while Dr. Dyson uses his AI machines to operate on the unconscious cyborg. The scene ends with the doctor looking quizzically through an advanced microscope. The next day, a young teenager wakes up in bed, her face riddled with surprise at her arms and body. She places both of her hands before her, which is now robotic, and stares at them in astonishment. She takes a long look at her legs and realizes they are the same thing. She makes an attempt to walk, but she falls immediately, throwing her half-human, half-robot self to the ground. Fortunately, she's able to walk the second time she tries. She then takes a look at herself in the mirror, puts on a shirt, and walks out of the room. Cinema recap here. We've got a little challenge that'll take 5 seconds, and it will change your life forever. You ready? All you gotta do is like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and you'll receive 10 free years of good luck. It's as simple as that. Downstairs, the doctor and his nurse are treating a cyborg patient who has issues with his robotic arm. After the treatment, the patient is unable to offer cash payment, and instead offers the doctor fruits in exchange. At the same time, the teenage girl lurks in the stairs, looking at the doctor, nurse, and his patient. A few seconds later, the patient leaves, and the nurse sarcastically announces that if they keep getting paid with fruits, it would only be a matter of time before they lose the business. The doctor and nurse finally notice the teenager behind them, and they ask about how she feels. The girl says she feels no numbness or pain anywhere, but is just a little hungry. She's given an orange, which she eats without peeling. This gives the doctor the idea that her taste receptors are working just fine. The orange is peeled, and the girl asks if she's supposed to know the doctor and his nurse, further asking if the duo knows who she is. Dr. Dyson and the nurse admit that they haven't actually met before, and were hoping that she would be able to tell them all they needed to know. The doctor explains that she's a total replacement cyborg that had lost all of her cyber body, adding that the only thing that survived was her brain, which theoretically means that she should remember something. But the teenage girl sadly mentions that she can't remember anything, including her own name. She goes outside with the doctor and his nurse, and she's excited at the hustle and bustle of the outside world. The doctor tells her about Salem, the city above, and terms it the last of the great sky cities. He tells her that the name of the place they're in is Iron City and is what remained after the fall, the Great War. He then names her Alita. The doctor also tells her that nobody goes from Iron City to Salem, and it's a rule that has never been broken. Alita is distracted by a big screen advertising a game known as Motorball, and she expresses her desire to play the game someday. The doctor leaves to attend some other business while Alita meets a cute little dog who she shares her meal with. This causes her to be oblivious to the huge Centurion walking towards her. The Centurion announces its presence while she tries to put up a fight. However, she is saved and carried off by Hugo, a young man who's amazed by her strength and boldness. The doctor returns and tells Hugo that Alita is new in the city, which explains why she has no idea about certain things. Hugo leaves on his powerful unicycle. The next scene features a woman coming off from a tricycle. Walking home, she's startled by a noise in the dark and is promptly killed by a shadowy figure. Alita wakes in bed, opens her door slightly only to see the doctor walking out in a black trench coat and hat, also brandishing a small weapon. The next morning, the doctor explains with a patient in the room that jackers steal body parts for the black market, parts which will be sold to the participants of the motorball games. Due to the murder of the woman in the previous scene, the doctor tells Alita he doesn't want her out after dark. Also, Alita notices a wound on the hand of the doctor which he has covered with a bandage. In the next scene, Alita meets a tall woman who's fascinated by her skin. We then realize that the woman and Dr. Dyson had a daughter together, who unfortunately died years ago. The body, in fact, belongs to this dead daughter, and the woman, Dr. Chirin, tells Dr. Dyson that he should have destroyed the body years ago. At the same time, Alita comes upon a group of teenagers playing motorball. Hugo appears and brings Alita into the game, but this doesn't sit well with Tanji, a friend of Hugo who pushes her off in her first attempt. In revenge, Alita pushes off Tanji, steals the ball, and scores a win for her team. The film cuts back to the doctors seated at an open restaurant, and Dr. Chirin asks if they become a team again so they can make it back to Salem. But Dr. Dyson is uninterested, especially because she trusts Vector, who she believes is her ticket back to Salem. As the scene closes, we see a dramatic shot of Vector in a state-of-the-art vehicle, surrounded by bodyguards. Meanwhile, Hugo and Alita are having a good time. He takes her on his unicycle, and she tastes chocolate for the first time. At the market, they come across Zapin, a hunter-warrior who uses swords to kill his targets. Asking why he uses a sword when he could easily use a gun, Hugo tells Alita that all guns are outlawed in Iron City and can be punishable by death. Hugo takes her to the top of a huge building and tells her about his dream to one day make it to Salem. He adds that Alita must have seen it, since she was thrown from up there. At night, Alita's in bed when she hears a sound. She stands, follows the sound, realizes that it's the doctor in his trench coat and weapon again, and this time she decides to follow him. She follows him to the point where he's about to kill a woman in a red hood and stops him in his tracks. But she immediately figures out that this is a bad idea, as 3 different cyborgs corner the doctor. He's easily defeated, and seeing that his death is near, he calls to Alita to run away. But she doesn't. Instead, she starts to fight against the cyborgs, defeats 2 of them in an instant, and is faced with the last, Gruishka. She begins fighting against this huge figure and suddenly remembers a bit of her past. She finds herself fighting a war on the moon while someone calls out her real name, 99. At the end of this scene, she's unable to defeat Gruishka, but damages him to the point that he retreats. Afterwards, Dr. Dyson reveals that he's a hunter-warrior, and finally reveals his secrets to Alita. He reveals that the body in fact belonged to his daughter, who died before she could use them. She had been killed by a cyborg he had treated, and to avenge her death, he became a hunter-warrior. The next scene, we're given a closer look at the partnership between Vector and Dr. Chirin, but this exposition is cut short by Gruishka's appearance, asking for help. In his distressed state, he tells the doctor about how powerful Alita is. Nova then possesses Gruishka and tells Vector and the doctor to find the cyborg girl, Alita, and bring her to him. Dead, Alita now believes that fighting will help her remember her past, but Dr. Dyson disagrees and tries to discourage her from becoming a hunter-warrior. Angry that he doesn't want to support her decision, Alita walks away from him. She reappears with Hugo in a motorball game, and he tells her that the best motorball player gets taken to Salem every few years. Tanji appears with a few friends, and they drag Hugo away, mentioning an emergency. But before he leaves, he asks Alita to go out with him the next day. It happens to be that Hugo and Tanji are organ thieves, jackers, and they attack one of the motorball players, Kanuba, after his fight. Vector shows up and tells Hugo to take the stolen organs, the grind cutters, to Dr. Chirin. The next day, Alita goes on a trip around the city with Hugo and his friends, and they discover an abandoned alien ship that belonged to the United Republic of Mars, URM, during the war. Curious, Alita goes in and discovers an abandoned suit, which she takes back to Dr. Dyson. The doctor recognizes the suit as a berserker and tells Alita that it belonged to the powerful URM army from during the Great War. He then adds that Alita used to be a member of this army, but he would not install Alita into this suit. Angry, Alita signs up as a hunter-warrior with Hugo by her side. Together, they visit the Kansas bar, a place where all the other hunter-warriors hang out. Inside the bar, Alita tries to convince the other hunters to join her in defeating Gruishka, but this call for warriors is undermined by Zapin, who feels disrespected by her offer. Provoked by Zapin, Alita beats him up in a quick fight which ultimately results in a bar brawl. Dr. Dyson eventually arrives and stops the fight. For a brief moment, everybody thinks it's over, until an improved Gruishka appears in his crazy upgrade. Gruishka announces to everyone present that he now works for Nova, and he's only here for Alita. He challenges her to a fight in the underworld, where he hands her a decisive lashing. Alita is dismembered, but just as she's about to pass out in defeat, she remembers her past, or transported to a scene in the past where she's being trained and motivated by a more experienced fighter. This fighter also mentions that Nova is the enemy that must be killed at all costs. Back in the present, Alita rises with every ounce of strength in her body and sticks her hand in Gruishka's eye, blinding him. However, this doesn't kill him. Dr. Dyson, Hugo, and another hunter warrior, McTeague, arrive just in time to save Alita and defeat Gruishka. Seeing that he has once again failed Nova, Gruishka retreats in shame. The doctor takes Alita home and finally installs the berserker suit in an unconscious Alita. When she finally opens her eyes, she displays her improved strength by balancing her entire body on one finger, a move she would have been previously unable to achieve. Excited, she finds Hugo, shows him her new skin, and he kisses her for the first time. Back at Dr. Chirin's laboratory, Nova speaks to Gruishka through Vector, stating his disappointment in the cyborg for his failure. But instead of destroying him, Nova gives Gruishka another chance, this time asking for the heart of Alita. After Nova leaves, Vector expresses his desire to kill Alita through another means. In the next scene, Vector sits with Hugo, and they discuss Hugo's plans to one day live in Salem. But it's a ploy to get information about Alita. He asks about her, but the scene cuts immediately to the next morning. Hugo's asleep in bed, while Alita watches him from his window. He wakes up and is surprised at her presence, but this astonishment doesn't make him any less happy to see her. He tells her about his plans to go to Salem, adding that he just needs 90,000 points to make his dream a reality. Alita offers him her heart and tells him to sell it for his trip, but he refuses. He then suggests that she become a pro motorball player, and they could both go to Salem together. She agrees, but only on the condition that he becomes her coach. Taking Hugo's advice, Dr. Dyson and his nurse prepare Alita for her first trial game. At the same time, Vector enters a dressing room filled with cyborgs, hunter warriors, and puts a bounty on Alita. He's willing to give 500,000 to the hunter warrior that kills Alita. Back at Alita's dressing room, she's furious at Hugo for not being at the game yet. In his defense, he has some important business that he has to attend to first. Hugo finds his friends and tells him that he no longer wants to be a jacker. This results in a huge fight between him and Tanji. Zapin shows up, kills Tanji and another cyborg, and frames Hugo for the murder of the cyborg. Severely injured, Hugo manages to escape and call Alita. Back at the stadium, Dr. Dyson notices that Alita's opponents are in fact hunter warriors, but the match starts before he's able to warn Alita of the danger. Alita breezes past the hunter warriors, breaking them apart quite easily. She then gets a call from Hugo, who informs her about Zapin trying to kill him and the death of Tanji. Alita successfully kills off the hunter warriors on her trail, but Hugo is not so lucky with Zapin. Alita arrives before Zapin hurts him, but as soon as she finds out about his past life as a jacker, she turns her back on him. Seeing that there's now a bounty on Hugo, Zapin pushes Alita to kill her lover, and even stabs Hugo to make things easier. Alita drags his body to an abandoned church and finds Dr. Chirin there. Against her better judgment, the doctor saves Hugo's life by attaching his severed head to Alita's body. Alita comes back out with Hugo's head and shows it to the Centurion, claiming the bounty for his head. But Zapin sees through this ruse, and he attempts to stop Alita from leaving. In one swift movement, Alita grabs Zapin's Damascus sword and cuts his entire cyborg face off. As luck would have it, Dr. Dyson is able to save Hugo by attaching his head to the body of a cyborg. The doctor informs Alita that he was born and raised in Salem, and his exile is the reason why he lives in Iron City. He further explains to her that the only way to get to Salem is to become a motorball champion. In Vector's factory, Dr. Chirin tells him that she's no longer interested in working for him. Meanwhile, Alita kisses an unconscious Hugo goodbye, saying there's something that she must do. Dr. Dyson assures her that winning this fight against Vector and Nova is what she has been built for, and she calls him father for the first time. Alita arrives at the secure factory of Vector, defeats the Centurions, and stands face to face with Vector. Vector tells her that the organs of Dr. Chirin have been harvested as punishment for her betrayal. Gruishka emerges, But due to the improved and enhanced state of Alita's body, it doesn't take long before she defeats him. However, during the fight with Gruishka, a large chunk of her memory returns. Suddenly, Alita's on the carbo tube where she witnesses her teammates murdered by the defense ring. As the tube crumbles, she's instructed to destroy Zalem. Back to the present, Nova takes the body of Vector and threatens to ruin her life. But Alita ends his beautiful ramblings by stabbing Vector in the chest. Just as Vector breathes his last, Dr. Dyson calls to inform Alita that the factory enforcers are looking for Hugo. He adds that he has helped Hugo escape, but it's only a matter of time before they find him. At this point, he tells her that Hugo is trying to make his way up to Zalem. Alita knows she has to find him immediately. She finds him on the carbo tube, clawing his way up. She tries to convince him to come back down, stressing that this is exactly where Nova wants him. Just as he's about to give in to her words, Nova releases the defense rings, which dismembers Hugo completely and throws him off the tube. Alita tries to save him, but his shredded arm is too weak for his body. Just before he falls to his death, Hugo thanks Alita for saving his life. A few months later, Alita competes at the Champions League, her first shot at becoming final champion and eventually going to Zalem. The crowd cheers at her appearance, while Nova watches from his safe haven in Zalem. She raises her plasma-charged sword at the sky, facing Zalem while her eyes are filled with rage. This is a review for Alita Battle Angel, which was produced by 20th Century Studios and featured Rosa Salazar, Christopher Waltz, Mahershala Ali, Jennifer Connelly, and a number of others.